I took the mocha pot with me the morning I left. Not my clothes, not the toolbox from the hallway cupboard, not the envelope of documents I should have grabbed first. Just the pot wrapped in a tea towel, the world tilted sideways tucked in the passenger footwell of my car. It was the only thing in that house I was certain was still mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Then my brother's wife walked into my mother's kitchen at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday and said, "This is our home now, Kaylin." The world tilted to understand that. Maeve said it the way you'd explain something to a slow child. Patient standing at the bench holding a mug that used to be Mum's. The world a dressing gown she draped over the hook behind Mum's bathroom door. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. I was holding the mocha pot still cold from the night, though I hadn't even turned the element on yet. The world tilted sideways. I didn't say anything back. I looked at her. This woman from Bloemfontein who had been living in my mother's house for 11 weeks. And then I looked at the pot. The world tilted sideways and then I turned around and filled it with water from the tap. I heard Maeve sigh behind me, that particular kind of sigh that's designed to be heard, and then her footsteps went back down the hallway. I put the mocha pot on the element and waited. The world tilted sideways. The pot belonged to Mum. She dropped it the year I was 12. It clattered off the bench and the bottom panel got dented so the whole thing sat slightly crooked. The world tilted sideways. She'd started to say she'd get a new one, but I'd picked it up and said it still worked, and it did. And somehow after that neither of us ever replaced it. Every morning for as long as I could remember, the world tilted sideways. The kitchen had smelled like that first hit of steam escaping, a little sharp, a little burnt, with the element warming the linoleum beneath it. The world tilted, and after I moved to my own flat in Newtown at 22, I'd come back on weekends and Mum would have the mocha pot on the bench waiting. She always started it before I got there. The world tilted till she passed 14 months ago. Ovarian cancer, caught late. The kind of late where they sit you down and speak in slow, careful sentences. She lasted 8 months from diagnosis. I was there at the end. The world left the house to me. That's the part that matters for what comes next. The world tilted sideways is in Eastbourne, on the eastern side of Wellington Harbour. 14 squares, weatherboard, a tin roof that drums when it rains, which in Wellington is frequently. The world tilted with a kitchen window looks straight out over the water. On clear days you can see all the way across to the Miramar Peninsula. The warm southerly days the wind comes off Cook Strait, and you can feel it through the glass. Mum had lived there since before I was born. She'd never remarried after she and my dad separated. The world tilted sideways. She kept the house tidy in the way of someone who doesn't have much but takes care of what they do have, a few nice pieces of china. The world tilted vegetable garden out back that she kept going until the last spring she was well enough to kneel. A bathroom cabinet so organized it looked staged. Brogan wasn't in any of that, or not much of it. Anyway. The Brogan is my half-brother, same mother, different fathers. The world tilted sideways. He's 7 years older than me, and for most of my life he was more like a distant cousin. Someone you'd see at Christmas and make conversation with and then not think about until next Christmas. The world till his father took him when he was 5, and then his father remarried and Brogan had a whole other life that didn't really include me or Mum. She still sent birthday cards. The word she still called on his birthday, even after a while he stopped calling on hers. She was like that. He came to the funeral. I'll give him that. The world tilted sideways. He stood beside me in his good suit at the Eastbourne Community Hall, and afterwards he hugged me and said, "You doing okay, mate?" And I said yeah, and I meant it, or I thought I meant it. About 3 weeks after the burial, he rang me. I was in the workshop. I run a joinery business out of a shed in Lower Hutt, bespoke cabinetry and furniture. The world tilted kitchens and fitted wardrobes for Wellingtonians with more square footage than taste. And I had sawdust in my ears and I almost didn't answer. He said he and Maeve were having a rough patch. The world tilted sideways. He said it with that particular male vagueness, the kind that doesn't want to be asked follow-up questions. He said Maeve had lost her job at the real estate agency. The world tilted sideways, and that his own income had been unreliable since he'd left the car dealership in Hutt Valley. He said they had Cohen and little Petra to think about, and that they were looking at a tight few months. The world tilted sideways. They could stay at the house for a bit, just while they sorted themselves out. A few weeks, he said, maybe 6. I thought about it for about 4 seconds. I said yes. The world think I'm a soft person. Exactly. I'm not the kind of person who says yes to everything out of fear of confrontation. But I thought, they've got 2 kids. It's a big house for one person. The world till would have said yes. I said yes because it seemed like the obvious human thing to do and because I thought I knew what a few weeks meant. I moved into the back bedroom, the smaller one. The Brogan and Maeve, the main room. He's 6, got the room that used to be Brogan's, the one time Brogan had ever actually stayed there. The world tilled for about 3 months when he was 17 and things with his father had gone sour. Petra is 18 months old. She slept in a portable cot in the corner of the main room. The world, at first it was fine. Not comfortable, exactly. It is a strange thing to share your childhood home with a woman you barely know. The world tilted sideways, who opens your cupboards and reorganizes things without asking, and who talks on the phone to her sister in South Africa in the early evenings in Afrikaans so you can't follow the conversation even if you tried. The world tilted zanageable. I went to the workshop early and came home late, and we orbited each other politely. The 6 weeks became 8, 8 became 11 every time I raised it, gently, carefully. The world tilted sideways the way you do when you're trying not to make someone feel bad. Brogan would say something about a lead on a job, or about the market being difficult, or about how hard it was to find a rental in Wellington right now. Which is true. The rental market is brutal. I knew that. So I kept letting the weeks tick over. The world tilted sideways and kept telling myself it was temporary, and kept starting my mornings with the mocha pot because it was the one part of the house that still felt like mine. Then the solicitor rang. Her name is Ingrid Solberg. Mum had used her firm since before I was born. The world tilted sideways, the same office on Lamenquay that had the water-stained ceiling tiles and the fern on the reception desk that had probably been there since 1987. Ingrid had handled the estate, the probate, all of it. She rang me on a Tuesday morning while I was sanding the back panel of a wardrobe for a client in Condola. The world tilted sideways. She said someone had contacted her office requesting a copy of the will. She said she was not able to tell me who. She said she wanted me to know, simply so I was aware that inquiries were being made. The world tilted sideways. I stood in the workshop with the sander switched off and tried to think about who else would have done that. There was no one else. The world tilted sideways. Mum had a sister in Napier who'd been in a rest home for 3 years and didn't know what year it was. She had a few friends, older women from the Eastbourne neighborhood, but they had no claim on anything. There was only Brogan. The world tilted sideways and that evening and walked into the kitchen, and Maeve was at the bench, rearranging the spice rack. She'd been rearranging things since she arrived, little incremental relocations. The world tilted sideways, though she was slowly composting my mother out of the house and replacing her with something else. The world tilted sideways. She'd put a framed photograph of herself and Brogan on their wedding day on top of the bookshelf in the lounge. She'd removed the hook by the front door where Mum used to hang her rain jacket. The world tilted himself a cup of tea and didn't ask. I wasn't ready to ask yet. I was still telling myself there was a reasonable explanation. The world tilted sideways. I went to bed that night and listened to the wind come up the harbor, and I lay there thinking about Mum in the last weeks. The world tilted sideways when she couldn't get out of bed most days and I was sleeping on the couch so I could hear if she needed me. The word about how she'd been very calm about all of it. Not the fake calm that people perform when they're actually frightened, but genuinely settled. The world tilted sideways, like someone who has thought carefully about something and reached a conclusion. She'd told me once that she wasn't worried about me. The world tilted sideways. She'd said it in the middle of a conversation about something else entirely, so I hadn't thought much about it at the time. I thought about it now. I don't know what time I fell asleep. The world tilted sideways sometime after midnight. The wind dropped and the house got very quiet. At 5:30 my alarm went, same as always. I got up, went to the kitchen, filled the mocha pot. The world tilted and buzzed while the element was heating. A message from a number I didn't recognize, just a link. The world tilted sideways took me to a givey little page. The profile photo was of Cohen and Petra, Cohen grinning, Petra on his lap, both of them in the Eastbourne backyard, the harbor visible behind them. The title read, "The world's young family keep their home in Wellington." The description said that a family with 2 small children, one a toddler, was facing displacement due to a family dispute over housing. The word they had nowhere else to go, and that any contribution would help them find safe accommodation. The family member causing the dispute was not named, but there was enough detail. The suburb, the world tilted sideways, the situation, the ages of the children, that anyone who knew me would know exactly who it was talking about. It had been posted 3 days ago. It had 42 donations. The mocha pot started to hiss. I poured the coffee and stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the harbor. The water was gray that morning, flat, with a low bank of clouds sitting over the Miramar Peninsula. A ferry was moving across it, very slow, very small. I drank the coffee. I rinsed the mocha pot. I picked up my keys. The world to call Ingrid Solberg. Ingrid picked up on the second ring. I told her about the givey a little page. I told her the detail in it, the suburb, the ages of the children, the way the description was worded so that anyone who knew me could fill in the blank. She was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that means someone is deciding how much to say. Then she said, the world tilted sideways. "Kaylin, I think you need to come in. There's something else I should tell you in person." I said I could be there by 11. The world tilted sideways. I drove to Wellington on the Remutaka Road with the radio off, which I never do. The harbor was running a chop from the south and the water through the Hutt Valley Gorge looked the color of old pewter. Though I parked on Lambton Quay and sat in the car for a few minutes before I went up. Ingrid met me at the door of the conference room, not the reception. She was a small woman in her 60s. The world tilted sideways, clunt. the kind of person who measured words and didn't waste them. She closed the door and set a manila folder on the table between us. She said, "Someone sent this to our office last week, by post, which is unusual. The purports to be a supplementary agreement to the estate. A document signed by you agreeing to a change in the property's disposition." I looked at the folder but didn't touch it. "It's not signed by me," I said. "The world," she said. "I didn't think it was. The signature is inconsistent with the one on file. But whoever prepared it has been careful. The formatting is correct. The language is correct. If I hadn't compared signatures directly, I might have sent it for processing." I sat with that for a moment. Someone had researched how estate documents were worded. Someone had spent time on this. The world tilting things up or paying someone to look them up. Maeve worked in real estate, I thought. For 7 years before she was let go, she would have handled conveyancing paperwork. She would know what these things looked like. I asked Ingrid what the document said. She opened the folder and turned it toward me. I read it. It said that I, Caelan Cross, agreed that the property at the Eastbourne address would be held jointly by myself and Brogan Pendleton for a period of no less than 3 years. The world tilted saw, during which time neither party could sell or transfer without the other's consent, and that in the event of dispute the matter would be referred to a family mediator rather than the courts. The world tilted sideways. If it had gone through, I would have had no way to remove them. Not quickly, not without a legal fight that would cost more than the house was worth in energy, if not in money. Though I asked Ingrid what she was going to do with it. The world tilted sideways, said that was partly why she wanted me to come in. She said the document constituted fraud. She said she was obligated to report it. The word though, she also said that if I wanted to pursue it as a civil matter first, to give family the chance to step back without involving the police, that was my choice to make. The world tilted side, she would support whatever I decided. I said I needed to think about it. She said take the time I needed, but not too long. I drove home in the same silence I'd driven in. The world, when I got back to the house, Brogan's Holden was in the driveway and the lights were on in the kitchen. I sat in my car in the street for a few minutes, watching the light through the window. The world tilted, see the shape of Maeve moving around inside. I could hear, faintly through the glass, Cohen's voice, asking something the way kids ask things without pause for breath. The world tilted sideways. As a good kid, Cohen, dark-haired like Brogan, has Maeve's watchful eyes. He'd knocked on my workshop door once a few weeks after they moved in, and asked if he could watch me work. I said yes. The world tilted sideways and he sat on an upturned milk crate for 40 minutes without saying much, just watching my hands on the wood. Before he left, he said quietly. The world tilted sideways. It was good that things got fixed instead of thrown away. I didn't say anything back, I just nodded. But I thought about it afterwards. That precise little observation from a 6-year-old. I went inside. Brogan was at the kitchen table with a beer. He looked up when I came in and something moved across his face. Not guilt, exactly. The more like the look of a man who knows a conversation is coming and has decided to get there first. I think we need to talk, he said. Yeah, I said. Would do. The world tildezo came in from the hallway, Petra on her hip. She sat down at the table like she'd been expecting this, which she probably had. Petra grabbed a fistful of Maeve's hair and pulled. The world detached her fingers with the automatic patience of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Brogan said, Look, I know the timing with the V little wasn't ideal. The world to understand what we're dealing with. We've got 2 kids, we've got no income coming in. Wellington rents are? You've seen what they are, we can't just… Brogan, I said. The word he stopped. I know about the document, I said. The one that was sent to Ingrid's office. A silence, long enough that Petra said something in her 18-month-old non-language. Some vowel-heavy syllable, and Maeve shushed her. Brogan said, What document? I looked at Maeve. Her face had gone very still, the kind of still that isn't calm. The world tilted sideways, sent a letter to Ingrid Solberg's office. A document with my signature on it, agreeing to share the property. Except I never signed it. Brogan set his beer down. The word know what you're talking about. Brogan, I'm telling you, I have no idea. Don't, I said, and something in my voice made him stop. Not anger, I wasn't angry. The word in any clean way I could identify. I was tired. I was looking at my brother across my mother's kitchen table and feeling the specific exhaustion of watching someone you grew up with choose, the quite deliberately, to lie directly to your face. Maeve said quietly, Caelan, think about the children. The world tilted at her. She met my eyes steadily. She genuinely believed that was a valid card to play. The world tilted sideways. The complete sincerity of a woman who had decided that what she was doing was not wrong because it was for her family, and a mother's job was to protect her family. The word who didn't understand that was the problem. She wasn't even ashamed. She was certain. I am thinking about them, I said. The world tilted sideways. So the only reason I'm having this conversation instead of a different one. I left the room. I went to the back bedroom, my small room. The world tilted sideways, with the single window that faced the garden rather than the harbor, and I closed the door and sat on the bed and looked at the wall. The world tilted sideways. The wall had a small water stain near the cornice that I'd been meaning to touch up for 3 years. Mum had never bothered with it either. I don't know why I looked at it. I just did. The world tilted sideways. I sat there for a long time thinking about what Maeve had said. Think about the children. And the thing was, she wasn't wrong that I was thinking about them, because I was. The world tilted sideways. I was thinking about Cohen on his milk crate, and Petra with her fistful of hair, and where they would go if I did what I had every legal right to do. The world tilted sideways. I was thinking about the fact that none of this was their fault and all of it would fall on them regardless. I was also thinking about the document with my name on it. The world to weeks of planning that must have gone into it. The research. The postage. Whoever had done it. And I was not actually uncertain about who had done it. Had not done it in a moment of panic. The world tilted sideways. It was deliberate. It was calculated. It was the action of someone who looked at this situation and thought the easiest way through is to change the paperwork. The world tilted sideways, all of it quieter than everything else. I kept coming back to the phone call from Ingrid 2 weeks ago. Someone had requested a copy of the will. Not recently, early on. The world tilted sideways, within weeks of the funeral. Before Brogan had even asked to stay, they'd looked at the will before they came to me. They'd known exactly what they were asking for when they rang and said a few weeks. The world's maybe sips. I didn't sleep much that night. I heard the house around me in the dark, the harbor wind, the tin roof. The world tilted sideways. The particular the hallway floorboard outside the back bedroom that I'd known my whole life. I heard Petra cry once around 2 in the morning and then go quiet. The world tilted sideways. I lay there and I thought about Mum, and I thought about the phone call where she'd said she wasn't worried about me, and I still couldn't work out what she meant by it. The world tilted. Next morning I was out of the house before 6. I didn't make the mocha pot, I just left. The world to the workshop, and I started on a cabinet I had due at the end of the week, a kitchen job for a couple in Seatown. I sanded and fitted and measured and the morning passed. The world tilted sideways. 9. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't know. A woman's voice, not young, with a careful, formal quality that made me think she was reading from something. The world tilted sideways. She said she was calling on behalf of a journalism interest that had been following up a story about a Wellington housing dispute. She said she'd been given my name as the other party. The world tilted sideways. She said she wondered if I had any comment on the family's situation and whether I would reconsider my position given the public interest. I said, "Who gave you my name?" She said she wasn't able to say. Right, and I ended the call. The world put my phone down on the workbench and looked at my hands. There was sawdust in the lines of my knuckles. The workshop smelled like pine and linseed and the faint diesel ghost of the heater I'd run through the winter. A journalist. They'd contacted a journalist. Or more likely, the world tilted sideways. They'd posted online somewhere under the guise of seeking advice or community support, named enough detail that someone had picked it up, and now a stranger was calling me asking for comment. The world tilted sideways. The Give a Little page had been running for almost 2 weeks. It had more than 100 donations by then. I'd made the mistake of checking it the night before. The world tilted sideways. The comments were the worst part. I'd scrolled through them once and then wished I hadn't. People who didn't know me, didn't know Brogan, didn't know any of it, weighing in with absolute certainty. The world tilted sideways. Disgusting behavior from the brother. How can someone turn family away when they have nowhere to go? One person had written, "This is what happens when the housing system fails ordinary people. The Werther should be ashamed." Someone else had shared the link with the caption, "This is why we need emergency family housing legislation." My name wasn't there. There were enough people in Eastbourne would know. I called Ingrid. She answered from what sounded like her car. I told her about the journalist. She said, "Right. Okay. The kind of okay that is not okay. Kaylin, I think we need to move faster than I thought. Can you come in again today, this afternoon if possible?" I said yes. She said, "Bring anything you have in writing, any messages, any records, anything at all." The world tilted sideways. I sat in the workshop for a few minutes after I hung up. Then I went through my phone. 12 weeks of messages looking for anything that might mean something. The world tilt texts from Brogan in the early weeks, mostly logistical when he was arriving, whether he could use the second car space, asking if the hot water cylinder was always that slow. The world tilted sideways and it did anything. Nothing that gave me anything clean. Then I found the one from 8 weeks ago, a Saturday morning, when I'd raised the subject of a timeline again. The world had texted back, "Mate, we've already discussed this. You said you were fine with things as they are. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I read it 3 times. The world tilted sideways. "You said you were fine with things as they are." I had never said that. I had said I understood their situation was difficult. That was not the same thing. The world was, in writing from him, a claim that I had agreed. A small thread of the same pattern as the document. a record being constructed piece by piece that I had consented to all of it. The world tilted back across the Remutaka that afternoon with the folder of messages on the passenger seat and the harbor going dark in the early July light, that I thought about a person who could do all of this, not in a flash of desperate improvisation, but carefully over weeks building a case, and still sleep in my mother's bed at night. The were about Maeve sitting at the kitchen table with Petra on her hip, looking at me steadily, saying, "Think about the children." And I thought, she's not wrong that this will hurt them. I thought, the world tilted sideways and she's counting on me knowing that. By the time I reached the Ngaranga interchange and the city spread out ahead across the basin, I had made up my mind about something. Not everything, not the full shape of what came next, but one thing clear and solid. The world to be the reason this ended badly for those kids. But I was also not going to let that fact be used against me like a lever. Those were both true at the same time. The world tilted sideways. How to hold both of them was the only thing that mattered now. I found a park on Lambton Quay. I went upstairs to meet Ingrid. I left the mocha pot at the workshop. I wasn't sure why. The world tilted sideways. I'd taken it that morning without thinking, wrapped in a tea towel, and put it in the passenger footwell. Maybe because I'd stopped trusting the house to leave anything in it. The world tilted sideways, because it was the one thing I knew I could carry out without anyone noticing it was gone. It sat in the footwell of my car all afternoon while I was upstairs with Ingrid. The world tilted the options, learning which ones were mine and which ones had already been taken from me. When I came back down, I sat in the car and looked at it for a moment. Crooked, still holding its shape. I drove back to the workshop and made no decisions I wasn't ready to make. But I kept the door locked that night. The notice to vacate went out the following Monday. The world's office sent it by registered post and courier simultaneously. Standard practice, she said, when there was reason to believe a party might claim non-receipt. It gave 21 days. The world tilted sideways, the law required. It included a summary of the evidence, the forged document, the signature comparison, the timeline of the will inquiry made before the request to stay had ever been placed. It did not threaten police, it simply stated what existed and what the legal position was. The world tilted the house that day, or the day after. I stayed at the workshop and I worked, which is what I do when I don't know what else to do. I finished the Sidon cabinet. I started a set of shelves for a library in Karori, floor-to-ceiling Rimu. The world kind of job that requires your full attention, because Rimu has its own ideas about what it wants to do and you can't force it. On the fourth day, Brogan rang. I answered. I don't know why. The world tilted sideways because I thought it would be worse not to. He didn't yell. That surprised me. His voice was flat, almost careful, like someone who had been told to stay calm and was concentrating on doing it. The world tilted sideways. This isn't what Mum would have wanted. I said, I've about that. He said, she would have wanted us to sort this out between us. Yes, I said, she probably would have. The word that she also would have wanted us to sort it out honestly, and I don't think that's been on the table. A silence, longer than I expected. The world tilted sideways, and he said, and his voice dropped in a way I hadn't heard from him before. Not in this conversation, not in any conversation I could remember. I didn't know about the document. I didn't say anything. The world tilted sigh to know that, he said. I didn't know. I stood in the workshop with the phone against my ear and looked at the half-finished Rimu shelves and thought about whether I believed him. The world tilted sideways. I thought about it carefully and honestly, the way you try to think about things when you're not sure, you're not just believing what you want to believe. I thought the world had researched the estate language. Maeve had handled the Gavia little page. Maeve had made the call to the journalist's contact. The world tilted sideways. Brogan had texted me that I'd agreed to things as they are, but that could have been his own revisionism. The kind of thing people tell themselves when they want something badly enough. It was possible, not certain, but possible. I said. The world tilted. Say thank you. He said, we'll be gone by the 21st. He hung up first. I put my phone in my pocket and picked up the sandpaper and went back to the Rimu. The world tilted sideways. The grain ran long and even on that piece, the way good timber does, and I worked with it rather than against it. They were gone on the 19th, 2 days early. The world tilted sideways. I don't know where they went. Brogan's father still had a place somewhere in the Manawat, I thought, or Maeve might have had family in Auckland. I didn't ask. The world tilde found out they'd left because the next door neighbor, Colette, rang to tell me the Holden was gone and the lights had been off since the previous evening. Colette said, do you want me to check inside? I said I'd come myself. I drove out on a Thursday morning, the middle of July, the Remutaka Road icy at the top, and then clear as I came down into the Hutt Valley, and then the motorway and then the Harbour Road. The water was running long swells from the south, clean and dark. A cormorant sat on one of the orange marker buoys with its wings spread, drying itself in the thin winter sun. The house was unlocked. The world tilted sideways. The door wasn't locked, which made me think they'd left the new key inside and couldn't relock it on the way out, or didn't care to. Though I pushed it open and stood in the doorway for a moment. The world tilted sideways. The smell was different, not unpleasant. It smelled like cleaning product, the lemon kind, and underneath that the particular neutral smell of a place that has been recently vacated. The world tilted's things were gone. The wedding photo was gone from the bookshelf. The hook by the front door was still missing. The world tilted sideways. The spices she'd reorganized were reorganized again in whatever configuration she'd left them. The kitchen bench was clear except for the new key, sitting on the laminate next to the element. The world tilted through the rooms. The main bedroom had been made up carefully. Bed stripped, mattress protector left on, folded towel stacked on top. Cohen's room had a crayon mark on the skirting board. The world tilted sideways, a long scrawled line in red at child's knee height that hadn't been there before. I crouched and looked at it. I didn't wipe it off. I went to the kitchen. The world till stood at the bench for a long time, not doing anything in particular. The window was the same. The harbor was the same. The world's water stain on the wall above the cornice in the back bedroom was the same. I'd looked at it on the way past. Then I went out to my car and I got the mocha pot from the boot. The world tilted sideways where I'd put it that morning, still wrapped in the same tea towel. I unwrapped it and filled it at the sink. I put it on the element. While it heated, I found the letter. The world tilted sideways. It wasn't an envelope. It was folded 3 times and pushed under the edge of the Rimu breadboard that Mom had kept on the bench since I could remember. The breadboard had stayed. The world tilted sideways. Maeve must have missed it or not thought it worth taking. I saw the white corner of paper sticking out when I went to move the board, and I pulled it out and unfolded it. The world's in Mum's handwriting, but not the way I remembered it. The letters were smaller, more deliberate. The world tilted sideways, the way someone writes when their hands aren't steady and they're concentrating on keeping the lines straight. Ingrid's firm had included a copy with the estate documents, but I'd never read it properly. The world tilted folded it once, seen her handwriting, and put it down. I told myself I'd read it when I was ready. She'd written it 6 weeks before she died. She didn't write the way she talked. The writing was slightly formal, a little old-fashioned, with capital letters in places she wouldn't have emphasized in speech. She wrote about the house, about what it had meant to her, about wanting it to go to someone who would look after it, about knowing that Brogan had people in his life to help him and that Kaelin, she wrote my name. Kaelin is the one who always managed. The world tilted Soichiro. I am not leaving this to you because you need it more. Brogan needs things differently and I trust he will find a way. The world tilted sigh, leaving it to you, because you have never once asked me for anything, not since you were 12 years old and you picked up that pot off the floor and said it still works. The world you to have something you don't have to give back. I stood at the bench and read that paragraph 3 times. The mocha pot started to hiss. I don't think I fully understood until that moment. The world tilted sideways. What she had seen, she wasn't wrong about any of it. I had said yes to Brogan in 4 seconds because it hadn't even occurred to me to weigh my own claim against his need. The world into the small room. I had spent 3 months orbiting my own house. She had watched me do a version of that my whole life apparently. The world tilted sideways, and she had decided that the only way to stop it was to put something in my hands that the law would uphold even when I wouldn't. The world tilted sideways. She'd been trying to teach me something. Or not teach. She wasn't like that. She'd been trying to make something true for me that I wouldn't make true for myself. The mocha pot reached its pitch. The particular 2-note hiss it made when the pressure was right, slightly uneven because of the dented valve. I poured it into the mug that was mine. The one I kept at the back of the second shelf where Maeve hadn't reorganized, and I stood at the kitchen window. The harbor was doing what the harbor does in July. Running gray-green, long swells, the Miramar Peninsula clear and sharp across the water in the cold air. 2 kids were throwing a ball on the foreshore below the road. The world tilted sideways and catching game with rules only they understood. A bus went past on the esplanade. The whirl. I thought about Brogan's voice on the phone flat. Careful. I didn't know about the document. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. I thought about what it would cost me to decide it was true. The world tilted sideways, and whether that cost was one I could actually afford, and whether the answer to that changed anything about what had happened. I didn't reach a clean conclusion. I don't think there was one to reach. The word I knew was this: Mum had left me the house. She'd had reasons I hadn't understood, and now I understood them. There were her reasons, and she was gone, and I was still here, and the mocha pot still worked. That was the whole of it. The word didn't call Brogan back that day. I didn't close the give a little page, but I did send a message to the platform with the evidence, and within 48 hours it was removed. The world tilted sideways. Contact never rang again. Ingrid sent a final update letter confirming the notice period had been completed and the property was mine uncontested, which it had always legally been. The whirl spent the afternoon going through the house room by room slowly. Not cleaning, just being in it. putting things back where they'd been. The world tilted sideways, rehooking the rain jacket hook. I found it in the cupboard under the stairs. Maeve had put it there rather than throw it away, which was something. I straightened the breadboard, though I didn't touch the crayon line on the skirting board in Cohen's room. The world tilted sideways. In the afternoon I sat at the kitchen table with the second cup of the day, the mocha pot back on the bench in the same spot it had sat for as long as I could remember. The world's element just warm enough to keep the base from cooling too fast. The wind came up off the harbor the way it does, through the gap in the window frame that Mum had never fixed. The world found its way in and moved along the bench and lifted the edge of the breadboard slightly, just for a moment, and then it settled. I left the coffee half finished. The world tilted sideways. I went out to the garden and looked at the vegetable bed Mum had kept, empty now through winter, the soil dark and turned. I didn't know if I'd plant it in the spring. I thought I probably would. Though went back inside. I washed the mocha pot the way I always did, just water no soap, the way Mum had taught me, so it kept the seasoning. I dried it and put it back in its spot on the bench. The world tilted it on one side, still sitting crooked. Still, when I pressed my thumb to the valve, faintly warm from the element underneath, the world tilted sidewise, the light off, and went to bed in the big room. My mother's room, my room, for the first time since any of this had started. The world tilted side and made its usual sound against the shore below the road. The tin roof ticked as it cooled. The floorboard in the hallway didn't creak because no one was walking on it. The world tilted sideways. I lay there in the dark and listened to the house. It was quiet in the way of a place that has been yours for a long time and has waited, without complaint, for you to remember it. The world tilted and about the morning I was 12 and the mocha pot hit the floor. I remember the sound, that particular hollow clang of aluminium on tile. And I remember Mum saying, "Oh," the world tilted sideways, and reaching for it, and already half saying she'd get a new one. And I remember picking it up before she could and looking at where the base panel had buckled and saying it still works. The world know why I said it. I wasn't being noble. I wasn't thinking about her feelings or about resourcefulness or about anything really. I just looked at it and it was true, and so I said it. The world tilted sideways. She made the coffee anyway. The pot leaned slightly to the left on the element and she had to keep an eye on it so it didn't tip. She never replaced it. And after a while the lean became just the way the pot was, not a flaw, just its shape. We stopped noticing. The world tilted sideways. I think about that a lot. Not because it taught me something it didn't at the time. I was 12. I just wanted coffee and the pot still made coffee. The world tilted sideways, but now I think about my mother watching me pick it up off the floor, and what she saw when she watched me do that. The world tilted sideways, and how she carried whatever she saw for the next 22 years without saying it out loud. She was not a person who said things out loud if she thought you weren't ready to hear them. She waited. The world tilted down instead, when she knew she was running out of time, and she tucked it under the Rimu bread board in the kitchen that she also never replaced, and she trusted, or hoped, which is not quite the same thing, that I'd find it. I found it. The world tilted sideways. I still don't know the full shape of what Brogan knew and when. I've decided for now to let that be a thing I don't know, because I've learned slowly. The world tilted sideways. That certainty about other people's worst moments costs more than it returns. He rang again in September. We talked for about 10 minutes, carefully. The world you talk to someone you grew up alongside and no longer entirely recognize. He said Maeve was working again, something in property management up in Auckland. He didn't mention the document. The world tilted sided either. I asked how Cohen was doing. He said Cohen had started school and was doing well. We left it there. The world tilted sideways. The crayon line is still on the skirting board in what I've started calling the back room. I keep meaning to paint over it and I keep not doing it. The world tilt the exact height a 6-year-old makes a mark when he's sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, just drawing a line because lines are satisfying and no one told him not to. I don't know why I'm keeping it. I just am. The vegetable bed got planted in September. Silver beet, some spinach, the same things Mum grew because they survived the Eastbourne wind. The world tilted sideways. They're doing all right. And every morning I fill the mocha pot at the sink and I put it on the element and I wait for the hiss. The world tilted sideways. And it still comes out slightly uneven because the valve has been dented for 22 years and that's not going to change now. It leans to the left. I keep an eye on it so it doesn't tip. It makes good coffee. It always has.